In this video, I will configure the networking on Lubuntu to work as a router. In previous videos, I installed the operating system and configured the virtual networks. By the end of this video, I will have a fully functional router. I will now change to my Lubuntu system in which I am currently logged in as root. Linux, by default for security reasons, will not forward packets from one network card to another. This is a fundamental requirement for routing, so the first step is to switch this feature on. To do this, I will run pico, a text editor to make changes to the sysctl.conf file found in the etc directory. This file contains a number of system variables that affect the whole operating system. If I scroll down through the file, there are two settings that need to be configured to allow routing to occur. One for IP4 and the other for IP6. The first setting, net IP4 IP forward, you can see is already set to one which enables the option. However, you can also see that at the start of the line is a hash, which effectively makes this line a comment, which means this setting is ignored. So, in order to enable this option, all I need to do is remove the hash. This also applies to IP6. In order to enable that option, all I need to do is remove the hash before net IP6 config all forwarding. Note that all the required changes have been made. I will press Ctrl X to exit and Y when prompted to save the changes. Now that the system is configured for routing, the next step is to configure the network interfaces. To do this, I need to edit the file interfaces found under the network folder located in the etc folder. Once again, I will use the editor pico to make the changes. I have made this file available for download to save you typing it all in again. The link is available from the description of this video. To make things easier to identify items in the file, I will start by adding the comment network interfaces. Since the line starts with a hash, this line will be ignored. Under this, I need to enter in auto followed by the identifier for the network adapter. Linux uses ETH followed by a number to identify each network adapter. Auto is short for automatic, which simply means to bring up the interface automatically when networking is started rather than wait for an administrator to bring up the interface manually. In this case, I have 10 network adapters installed on this computer, so I need to enter in ETH0 to ETH9. The system has now been told that these network adapters exist and to bring them up automatically when the system starts, but they still need to be configured. To start with, I will configure the first network adapter, ETH0. I have used 5 lines to configure IPv4 settings and 1 line at the top as a command to make the interface details easy to find in the file. The first line is iface ETH0 inet static. iface stands for interface, so combined with the next part, ETH0, it is basically stating that we are configuring the interface ETH0. The next part configures which address family to be configured. In this case, inet means the details that follow are for IP4. Following this is static, which indicates that this will be a static IP address rather than a keyword like DHCP for dynamic configuration from a DHCP server. If you wanted to, this interface could be configured as DHCP rather than static. If you did this, you would only need to put in this line. The next 4 lines are not required. The interface configuration file is one of the few files that allows configuration to be over multiple lines. In this case, the next 4 lines are part of the iface configuration, even though they are different lines. In other words, the next 4 lines are additional options for iface. The line address, followed by an IP address, configures the IP address that will be used for that interface. The rest of the options pretty much explain themselves. Netmask sets the network mask used, gateway sets the gateway used, and DNS name servers configures the DNS servers that will be used. In this case, the DSL device I use to connect to the Internet will be used as the gateway and the DNS server. The IP address I have manually selected is an IP address that is not in use on the local network. The next lines are for IP6. The first line starts with iFace for interface, and the following lines configure additional options for the interface. Like before, you need to enter in the network adapter, which is ETH0, followed by INET6 to indicate IP6. Like before, I will configure a static address, so I need to use the keyword static. Unlike IP4, you need to add the line pre-up modprobe IP6. What this does is loads the IP6 module before configuration is attempted. Without this line, the IP address may not get configured correctly. The next line configures the IP address. The line after this configures the net mask for the address. In this case, it is 64. That is all the configuration required for the first network adapter. I will now add the configuration for the second adapter. Since the first adapter is connected to a network that has access to the Internet, it needed additional lines like gateway and DNS servers. You will notice for the second adapter, the settings are much the same as the first. However, the gateway and DNS server settings are not required. I will now enter the configuration for the other 9 network adapters. This will take a little while to enter, so I will pause the video and return once it is complete. Remember that there is a link to download this file in the description of this video. Now that all the settings have been entered, I can save the file and the network configuration is complete. It is a good idea to reboot the operating system since so many changes have been made. But essentially, the system is ready to go and ready to start routing. Well, that's it for the basic configuration of the router. In the upcoming videos, I will look at some configuration required for your home DSL device if you want a computer on your network to access the virtual network. Also, I will look at how to enable IP6 on the virtual router, even if your existing DSL device does not support IP6. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in these videos.